Seeing as they were at the forefront of mobile suit development anywhere in the solar system, Zeonic likely believed they could do no wrong. Whatever they created would always be more advanced than anything their competitors could produce. This was not an attitude the company had always held. It was born from success. Up to this point, the Zaku series had been the platform that dominated every battlefield, from space to the ground. For more than half a year, Zeon held a complete uncontested advantage. That changed when the Earth Federation began developing and deploying its own mobile suits. The Gundam and the Gym ground types started appearing in select theaters. Although their numbers were limited, they more than compensated with exceptional combat performance. In almost every engagement of these new mobile suits, the Zaku was defeated. A handful of pilots may have managed to overcome Gyms and Gundams, but those victories were likely the result of superior skill rather than the performance of the mobile suits themselves. The Zaku had originally been designed to fight an enemy whose doctrine revolved around battleships and conventional fighters. That design philosophy was what allowed Zeon to win the Battle of Loom. These mobile suits completely outclassed the Federation's FF-4 Toriares and the FF-3F Saberfish fighters in both mobility and firepower. The Yambak system enabled the Zaku to perform erratic maneuvers that made it difficult to target, and even its standard weapons could easily destroy large Federation spacecraft. Many early Zaku 2s carried bazookas equipped with nuclear warheads, allowing them to devastate large enemy formations. Their superiority was even more evident on Earth, where Zaku's vastly outperformed the tanks and infantry formations they encountered. However, once a comparable opponent appeared, the Zaku's dominance came to an end. When the military called for a new generation of mobile suits to counter the growing threat posed by the Gym, Zeonic struggled to adapt. What they offered was essentially an upgraded Zaku, designed specifically for mobile suit combat. To be fair, the Goof was an excellent machine. In the hands of a skilled pilot, it could destroy even the best mobile suits the Federation could field. However, Zima's Dom was simply better. Greater mobility, increased versatility, and easier production made it the obvious choice for the military. Fortunately for Zeonic, that was not the end of the story. As capable as the Dom was, it failed to halt the Federation's advance. Much of this came down to its weaponry. The Federation had access to lunar titanium, an alloy far more resistant to conventional Zeon weapons. The Dom remained a serious threat to Gyms, but it could not destroy enough of them to reverse the tide of the war. Before long, the Federation had regained control of much of the world. Once again, the military called for a new generation of mobile suits. Machines capable of defeating everything the Federation currently fielded and anything it might deploy in the future. Zimat focused on creating specialized units intended to eliminate high-value targets such as the Gundam. The company instead placed its faith in MIP's work, refining beam weapon technology that could be integrated into existing mobile suits to stem the growing tide of Gyms. Zeonic, however, looked to the past to understand what had made them successful in the first place. They examined both the Zaku and their rivals Dom. Despite their differences, the two machines shared one defining trait: versatility. Versatility had won every major competition so far, and Zeonic believed it would continue to do so. With a clear direction finally established, development of the Gelgoog began. While development of the Gelgoog officially began in the latter half of the year, the technology and design behind the mobile suit can be traced back to the Zaku 2 High Mobility series. The High Mobility Zaku line was a collection of prototypes developed to improve the Zaku 2's performance in space. Later variants were also intended to operate beam weapons, but never managed to integrate that capability in a practical manner. We will explore this family in greater detail at another time. After the military called for a new generation of mobile suits, Zeonic folded the high mobility program into what would become the Gelgoog project. The first prototype was the MS-06R-3S high mobility type Zaku, better known as the Gelgoog early prototype. This was most likely the machine Zeonic presented during the selection trials. The prototype was built on the foundation of the MS-06R2 high-mobility Zaku. At this stage of the war, Zeon's technological base had advanced considerably, allowing Zeonic to incorporate a number of new technologies into the design. The head retained the general appearance of the Zaku 2, but was constructed using redesigned components manufactured through modular and compact production methods. The most significant application of these new manufacturing techniques was found in the torso. Rather than a single structure, the torso was divided into 3 segmented sections. This approach served several purposes. First, it created space for a substantially larger generator. Second, it improved structural efficiency. The new frame was also faster to manufacture, as it consisted of smaller, more manageable sections. Additionally, its modular construction allowed for greater expandability, making it easier to develop specialized variants from the same base machine. However, the larger generator forced designers to place the cockpit in a less armored abdomen region. This design philosophy was likely influenced by the Federation's GIM. The GIM was engineered with modularity as a core principle, and the Gelgoog appears to have adopted a similar approach. Thanks to its larger generator, the prototype was capable of operating Zeon's first beam rifle and beam saber. However, it was equipped only with the existing heat saber for close combat. This may indicate that the generator was still not powerful enough to support sustained beam saber use, or that the beam saber itself had not yet completed development. Despite possessing a more powerful generator and what appears to be a significantly larger number of thrusters, including additional units mounted on the forearms, the prototype was actually slower than the R2 on which it was based. The R2 achieved a maximum acceleration of 0.80 g, where the prototype reached only 0.77 g. This was likely the result of its status as an early prototype that had not yet undergone full optimization. The heavier armor plating visible on the machine may also have contributed to the reduction in performance. Regardless of this apparent downgrade in mobility, the Gelgoog prototype excelled during the selection trials and was quickly chosen of the Gihren as Zeon's next generation mobile suit. It would become the foundation of what Zeon hoped would be its ultimate weapon against the relentless tide of Federation gyms. Zeon was known for maintaining multiple defense contractors. This competitive system was intended to drive technological innovation and was one of the reasons the nation produced so many different mobile suits and weapons in such a short period. While this approach encouraged rapid development, it became a logistical nightmare during wartime. Different manufacturing standards, incompatible components, and separate engineering philosophies complicated maintenance and supply. It was one of, if not the primary reasons, Zeon's Earth invasion campaign ultimately failed. For this final project, the government required all 3 major companies, Zeonic, Zemat, and MIP, to collaborate on the development and production of the final Gelgoog. Zeonic handled the mobile suit's overall design and construction, Zemat developed the propulsion system, and MIP focused on perfecting its beam weaponry. The result was the YMS-14 early Gelgoog, a significant evolution of the earlier prototype. Its overall construction was further refined. What had once been bulky and angular became smooth and streamlined. The head now featured additional armor that enclosed the previous exposed power pipes while also offering greater protection to the mono-eye. The rest of the body was also simplified. The Gelgoog's armor was reshaped into lighter, less complex panels that reduced manufacturing costs and overall bulk while covering the exposed mechanical components and the cooling ducts seen on the early prototype. Those exposed openings were likely Zeonic's brute force solution for improving the mobile suit's mobility. They were most likely cooling vents for the numerous thrusters integrated throughout the frame. Zemat, arguably Zeon's foremost expert in propulsion technology, assumed responsibility for refining that aspect of the design. The solution was considerably cleaner and more efficient. On the final model, the Gelgoog concentrated its main thrusters beneath the skirt armor and within its legs. Additional thrusters were installed in the forearms to improve maneuverability, particularly during atmospheric flight. These units were an improved version of the Rigdom's propulsion system. Even without a backpack propulsion module, the Gelgoog generated approximately 79,900 kilograms of thrust, comfortably surpassing both the GIM and the Gundam. It could also glide across the ground using rocket thrust alone, much like the Dom, without relying on specialized thermonuclear jet hover systems. Its exceptional mobility was matched by equally impressive firepower. By this stage of the war, MIP had finally perfected Zeon's first practical beam rifle. The weapon was developed using data and technology recovered from Site 6 and was clearly inspired by the Gundam's beam rifle. Both employed the energy cap system, essentially an energy magazine, and an integrated fire control system rather than a conventional optical scope. Zeon's beam rifle, however, was noticeably larger. Although it utilized energy cap technology, the Gelgoog also supplied additional power directly from its own generator to increase the weapon's destructive capability. The rifle's larger size likely accommodated more durable internal components, capable of handling the increased energy output. However, drawing power directly from the mobile suit generated significant heat, requiring additional cooling. This is likely why the Gelgoog featured two prominent rings of ventilation ports around its chest and waist. The Gelgoog's survivability also received considerable attention. It was equipped with a shield coated in an anti-beam treatment designed to improve resistance against beam weaponry. Its overall design appeared to have been inspired by Federation shields, including the addition of an observation viewport. Perhaps the Gelgoog's most recognizable weapon was the beam naginata. Co-developed with the Albert Company, it could project two beam blades simultaneously from either side of its long hilt. According to available sources, this unconventional design was intended to distinguish Zeon's approach from the Federation's standard saber. In theory, the twin blade configuration allowed the Gelgoog to change attacks together more fluidly. It offered many of the advantages of the Gihen's fencing-oriented combat style without requiring the specialized joints and movement systems found on that machine. In addition to standard slashes and thrusts, the pilot could spin the weapon rapidly, turning it into a deadly rotating blade capable of cutting through almost anything. When not in use, both the shield and beam naginata were stored on the mobile suit's back. Approximately 20 to 30 early Gelgoogs were built, with almost all of them assigned to the Chimera Corps. Char also received one after successfully returning from Earth. Although still technically prototypes, these machines were immediately deployed to the front lines in the hands of ace pilots for both combat evaluation and operational testing. They quickly demonstrated themselves to be among the finest mobile suits on the battlefield. The military formally approved the design for mass production in October. All three companies began manufacturing the MS-14A Gelgoog, with each producing components that best matched its area of expertise. Thanks to the Gelgoog's modular construction, specialized variations quickly followed. The original YMS-14 prototypes were subsequently redesignated as Commander-type units. The Gelgoog began appearing on the battlefield after October. However, its debut was not what many had expected. For the first few weeks, the mobile suit was equipped only with existing conventional weapons such as the Zaku machine gun and Zaku bazooka. Although the beam rifle and beam saber had been successfully designed, manufacturing delays meant they did not enter production until late November. MIP and Albert encountered significant difficulties producing both weapons. The original beam naginata was also ultimately cancelled in favor of a more conventional single-bladed beam saber. Zeon's beam weapon miniaturization technology simply had not reached the level achieved by the Federation. Until those beam weapons became available, the Gelgoog was in many ways not dramatically different from the existing Dom series. It was a highly mobile platform armed primarily with conventional weaponry, limiting its ability to exploit the advantages offered by its powerful generator. Even so, it still possessed advantages over the Dom, particularly its anti-beam shield, which significantly improved its survivability. By the time the beam weapon entered service, it was already too late. The Federation was well on its way to Zeon's homeland. Although Zeon managed to produce at least 700 Gelgoogs within only a few months, an impressive industrial achievement might I add, most of the pilots assigned to this ultimate mobile suit were inexperienced recruits fresh out of the academies. In that respect, they were among the fortunate ones. Many of the new pilots were forced to sortie in outdated mobile suits, or worse, the Augo, a hastily developed mobile pod equipped with minimal armor and inadequate weaponry. As the saying goes, a tool is only as effective as the person using it. The Gelgoog possessed the performance to rival or surpass anything the Federation could field, but its inexperienced pilots were rarely able to realize that potential. Through no fault of the machine itself, the Gelgoog failed to alter the course of the war. By the time of the final battle of Ao Bao Ku, only 67 units were present. Some have argued that had every aspect of the Gelgoog's development been completed just 2 months earlier, the course of the one-year war might have been very different. While its contribution to the one-year war was so small that it was effectively negligible, the Gelgoog left a lasting legacy, not among Zeon remnant forces alone, but across mobile suit development as a whole. It remained in service for decades and became the foundation for numerous high-performance designs developed by both Zeon and the Earth Federation. Various Zeon remnant groups continue operating the Gelgoog well into the UC0090s. That longevity speaks to just how advanced and adaptable the design was, even nearly 30 years later after its introduction. One of the primary reasons for its long service life was its parts compatibility. Although the Gelgoog was developed separately from the United Maintenance Program, its modular construction followed many of the same principles. It could use components from existing Zeon mobile suits with relatively few modifications, making repairs and maintenance far easier for isolated remnant forces. This compatibility also helped Zeon manufacture large numbers of Gelgoogs during its brief production run. By cannibalizing Zaku's and Dom's, Zeon remnants were able to keep their remaining Gelgoogs operational. Larger organizations even continued developing the platform into new variants. One notable example is the MS-14J Re-Gelgoog, or Refined Gelgoog, an evolution of the original design that improved nearly every aspect of the mobile suit. Although the Re-Gelgoog was primarily used as a training machine, ace pilot Ilya Pazom famously operated one as a personal unit. Axis Zeon later shared the Re-Gelgoog's design data with its Martian counterparts. Mars Zeon, however, was not particularly impressed, viewing it as little more than a modernized Gelgoog. Instead, they chose to develop their own successor using the technical data provided by Axis. The result was the Gelgoog 3. Later still, Mars Zeon developed the OMS family of mobile suits, which also included a design that traced their lineage back to the Gelgoog. Gelgoog captured by Federation forces were also pressed to surface, frequently acting as aggressor units during training exercises. Following the war, Anaheim Electronics acquired Zeonic and inherited much of its technical data. Although not a direct descendant of the Gelgoog, the RMS-117 Garibaldi Beta shared many similarities in both design philosophy and battlefield role, serving as a high-performance general-purpose mobile suit. Another notable descendant was the MS-14B Gelgoog Uma Lightning Custom. After the one-year war, former Zeon Ace and Cyber New Type Uma Lightning joined the Earth Federation and served as a test pilot in the 202nd Technical Test Battalion. Seeking to keep his trusted Gelgoog competitive with newer machines, he commissioned Anaheim Electronics to modernize it. Using technology developed for the ARC Zaku alongside newly developed Anaheim components, the company upgraded the machine with technologies such as magnetic coating, Gandarium alloy armor, and a panoramic cockpit. By the end of the modernization program, it was a Gelgoog in name more than in design. Anaheim was also responsible for developing the MS-14JBR Gelgoog Vertex. Although it closely resembled the Re-Gelgoog, the Vertex was actually an entirely new design based on technical data supplied by Axis Zeon. Originally, Anaheim had intended to provide Axis with new mobile suits following a Neon Zeon victory, but that victory never came. The Vertex project began after the search for the minaret. During the operation, the Chimera Corps encountered Shar Aznable piloting a psycho-frame-equipped DJ. The DJ effortlessly overwhelmed the Corps' newly manufactured high-mobility Gelgoogs, despite the extensive modernization of contemporary Anaheim technology. Recognizing the upgrades were no longer enough, the Chimera Corps returned to Anaheim and requested a machine capable of confronting the threat composed by new type pilots. Using the surviving high-mobility Gelgoog as a starting point, Anaheim rapidly designed and produced the Gelgoog Vertex. Once again, the Chimera Corps possessed a mobile suit worthy of its original mission, preventing a new type-led rebellion. These examples only scratch the surface of the Gelgoog's legacy. Numerous successors and specialized variants would follow. each building upon the design philosophy established by Xeon's final mass production mobile suit. Those machines and the stories behind them deserve their own discussion. But for now, though, that is the story of Xeon's late wonder weapon.